Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. This is Kenny, and in this video today I'm going to be teaching you how to build a to-do list application using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. So let's take a look at how this list works, this application works. So we'll just enter in a task. I'll just say task number 1, and there's two options after this. We can hit the enter key or we can hit this add task button. I'll just hit that for now. And as you can see, it added our task down here with a trash can button beside it, and it also emptied out the input. So let's try that again for task number 2, except this time instead of hitting the button, we're going to hit enter. And as you can see, it does the exact same thing. And also I added some CSS box shadows on these blocks to make it look more realistic in 3D. And now all we have to do to get rid of these tasks that we just created is just by hitting the button, and it's going to pull up this alert saying, are you sure you want to delete task number 1? And if we say yes, it's going to delete it. And if we say anything else other than yes, like I'll just type in some random stuff, it's not going to recognize it, so it's going to keep it. But if we said something like sure, why not? And I don't know why that's in caps, but as you can see, it got rid of it. So that's basically all there is to this project, but there's a lot of functionality involved in it, so I will try my best to explain each line of code to the best of my ability to make sure that you guys understand it as well as possible. So now without further ado, let's get right into the video. Okay guys, so I'm back in Visual Studio Code, and the first thing I've just done is generated my boilerplate code, which is all this right here, by hitting exclamation mark and then tab or enter. And now we'll just want to link these links into our head tag. So I'll just copy it, and this will be inside of a style tag, so I might as well create that right now and put that in there. And we'll also need our font awesome links because we'll be using some icons here, and that will be outside of the style tag but still within these head tags. Once we finish doing that, we can create a div with the ID of to-do container, and in here we'll just have an input with an ID of task input and then placeholder of enter a task, and we'll just create a button, give it an ID of add button. This will be the button that we'll use to append our task that we typed into the input onto our browser. We'll just call that button add task. So we'll create a div, give it an ID of tasks. So whatever task we input into the input, after we've clicked the button, it's going to append that onto this div with the ID of tasks. Right now it won't make sense, but it will once we start writing the JavaScript. And that is all we need for our HTML, so let's go style it up. So the first thing we'll do is just give it a background of, well, I have this image in my file already, so I just called it awesomegradient.jfif, and now we'll just want to do background repeat, no repeat. And sorry guys, I should have shown you guys what we have gotten so far, so let's refresh. And as you can see, we have our HTML on our browser as well as this gradient background. But as you can also see, it's not taking up the entire available width of the browser because we have a lot of white space over here. So we can fix that by doing background size cover, and if we go back, that should cover our entire browser. And let's also do background attachment fixed. Alright, awesome. Once we're done with that, we can style our to-do container, which is going to be this right here. We'll just do background FFF, which is pure white, and then with 600 pixels. Now we should have a container stretching like this. Awesome. And let's do height 170 pixels just to make it a little taller and more easier to see. And we'll do top 34%. And then we can do transform, translate, -50%, -50%. Then border radius 7 pixels, box shadow 0, 15 pixels, 30 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0, 0.3. So that's just going to give our container a little box shadow, as you can see. And now it's being cut off a little bit from our view, but that's okay, we'll fix that in a sec. So now we can get our to-do container as well as our task input as well as our task div and give all three of those the same style, which is going to be position absolute, which will also apply to these two styles here, because you can see, even though I did specify these two position styles for the to-do container, it didn't move in the first place. But after we have applied position absolute to it, it should go where we want it to, and as you can see, it does. And we can now style our task input. All we want to do is just give it a top 45%, left 34%, transform, translate, -50%, -50%, and then after that we can do border 2 pixels solid. And we just want to get rid of the background, so we can just set the background to none. Height will be 55 pixels, width will be 282 pixels, and then we can do border radius 5 pixels, which will round off the corners a little bit, and we can do font size 22 pixels, cursor, pointer, outline, none, font family, Poppins, sans serif. So we'll have our task input again, but this time we're selecting its placeholder, so we're going to get that input's placeholder. We'll just want to do font family, Poppins, sans serif. And to show you guys the difference, I'm going to comment this out or maybe delete it. And as you can see, it's not as well defined as when we actually have it. It's more bold and well defined. And we can do padding left 10 pixels to give it some space from this left side. And now let's select our add button. We'll just want to do cursor, pointer, float right, which will make it go all the way to the right. And then we can do position relative, width 110 pixels, height 60 pixels, top 48 pixels, background RGB 890-255, and now we'll give the border none, and we can do border radius once again will be 7 pixels, color will be white, font family will be Montserrat, and we can do font weight 500, font size 16 pixels, outline none, and that is all we need for our add button. So let's take a look at it. Now we're not done with all of our CSS yet, but we're going to skip some of it for now and go to the JavaScript, because if we continue typing some more CSS styles, you guys might be a little lost. So now let's just go write some JavaScript for our application. So now I'm going to initialize a few variables, and as you can see, there's a shorter way of having to type var for each of these variable names. You can just type var once, and then as many variable names as you want to create, separating them by commas, so that you have to do var button equals this, and then var task name equals something else, because it's just going to get repetitive and it's just going to take up a lot of time. So that's why using this form will save you a few lines of code. And now we can do input element, so we're going to select this right here, input elements, and we'll set it to document.query selector task input, which means it's going to select this input right here. And then we can do button equals document.query selector, and let's get our task names, so we can just do document.query selector. And obviously this doesn't exist yet in our HTML, but we're going to create it in a second using JavaScript. So now we can create another one called task blocks, and just do document.query selector, and now we can create a function called execute to run our code. So in here we can do if input element dot value does not equal an empty string, an empty quotes, that's what that is saying. So if we actually type something into the input, then it's going to run whatever is within these curly braces right here. So we just want to do, first we want to append the task onto browser. I'll just write that there for you guys if you guys want to take notes, and we can create a function. I'll just create that there as well. So we'll just say document.getElement by ID, and the ID is going to be tasks, which is going to be this div right here, and we're going to get its inner HTML, which is going to be this entire thing. So if we were to console log out the inner HTML of tasks, we're going to get all of this right here. So we want to append onto it. So to append stuff in JavaScript, you have to use plus equal, and we want to append some HTML code, so we have to use template literal strings. And in here we can start writing HTML. So we'll create a div with the class of task, which is going to represent this up here. And in here we want to have a span. Let me format this a little better. We want to have a span with the class of task name, which is going to represent this right here. And in here we're going to use this EJS ES6 syntax, which will allow us to use variables within template literal strings. So we're going to get our input element, make sure that it doesn't have an S. I don't know why I pluralized it in the first place. So it should be input element and dot value. So this is going to take whatever value the user typed into the input and put it in between these two span tags, and then it will display it onto our browser. And whenever we click the button, we also want to create another button, give it a class of delete, and in here we'll have an I tag, and it just happens to be that I remembered what the class name was for the trash can icon, which is fastfa trash alt. And then we can empty out our input field. So in here we're just going to do input element dot value, and we'll just set it to an empty string. That's how you empty it out. And now we'll just do variable delete buttons, and this is going to be a node list because we're storing HTML elements in arrays, in JavaScript arrays. Once we've created that variable, we'll just want to loop through it, so we can do delete buttons. So first call the variable, and we're going to use a for each method on it, which will allow us to loop through it using this single parameter that we're just going to call E. And for E, we're going to give an event listener. So E represents each individual button within this node list. So we can use an arrow function, and we'll create another variable called verify. And this is going to be a prompt. So it's going to say, are you sure you want to delete? And then we're going to use this syntax again. So we're just going to say this dot document dot query selector task name dot text content. So let me explain to you guys what all of this right here is doing. So we're simply going to grab the current task name that has the delete button paired up with it, which is why we use the this keyword, which will select the current task name, and task name is a span, so it's going to select that span and grab its text content. So if in between these two spans it had something like hello world, then it's going to grab hello world and store it in this prompt. So it's going to say, are you sure you want to delete hello world? So it's basically going to alert us, asking us if we want to delete that task that we typed into the input. And now we can create an if statement, and we can say if verify to lowercase. So whatever the text content that we got here, we're going to convert it to lowercase letters only. So we're going to say if verify.toLowercase equals yes, or it equals, you know what, I'll just copy this right here. So we can do this dot document query selector task dot remove. So we're going to simply remove it, and we can do e dot remove as well to also remove the button once we've clicked it. So it's not only going to remove the task name, but it's also going to remove the button with it. And if this is not the case, then we'll just do alert please enter a task. And now if we go back and try doing, let's just grab the input element and do on key up, and we're going to pass an E for our parameter. So now we're going to use another if statement and use e.keycode, which is the JavaScript keyboard event. And if the key code is equal to 13, 13 represents the enter key, because every key on our keyboard has a unique key code to it. So if the key code is equal to 13, then that means we have pressed the enter key. So if the key code is 13, then we'll just want to run the function called execute. If that isn't the case, then we can just give our button an on click, once again use an arrow function, and we'll execute the function here instead. So now if we go back and try adding a task, I'll just say task. It does show up here, but as you can see, we're not getting it down here where we wanted it to, because we forgot to add some CSS styles to it. So let's go do that now. I'm sorry if I'm making this video any more confusing than it needs to be. It just has a lot of code to it. So now let's just go do dot delete. So we're selecting all of the delete buttons, and we'll just do background RGB 890255. We can set the border to none just to get rid of it. Color will be white, so that shows up well on this bluish purple background. And let's do padding 6 pixels, cursor pointer, so that whenever we hover over it, it turns into a pointer. And we can do position relative and move it left 485 pixels, bottom 47.2 pixels. And we can also do transform scale. We'll just want to scale it by 2.6 to make it a little bit larger. So let's try generating it again. And now it's up here. Not quite where we want it. And now we can do border radius 0 pixels, transition 0.3s. Now we're going to give our button a hover property, and we're just going to do background RGB 6995 243. And now we can get our task div and do background white, width 400 pixels, height 68 pixels. Display will be set to flex. Justify content will be center. Align items center. Font family Poppins. Font size will be 2 rem. Cursor will be pointer. Box shadow 0, 15 pixels, 60 pixels, and it will be RGBA 000.3. And now if we tried creating another task and hitting the add task button, then it's going to generate this white rectangular block with the trash icon with it. So that's what that does right there. And we'll also want to do position relative left 70 pixels so that there's no more space in between it and the button. They're practically attached to each other. And now we just want to give our task div a width of 600 pixels, so it's going to be the same width as this entire container right here. Height will be 90 pixels, top will be 60%, left 50%, transform, translate, -50%, -50%, border radius will be 8 pixels, and that is all we need for our CSS, so let's go test it out one more time. But actually, we should move this button a little bit more to the left because it's sticking to the side, which just makes it look ugly, so let's go fix that. Let's do right 50 pixels, we're just eyeballing it. Let's do right 80 pixels instead, maybe 70. Okay, that's good enough, that's centered now. And let's test it out one more time before we wrap up for the video. So we're going to have task number 1, and if we hit enter, it's not going to do anything, so let's go see what went wrong. So what I did wrong was that I accidentally wrapped this number 13 in quotes, which was why it didn't have the same data type in JavaScript, so therefore it didn't recognize our keyboard event. So we'll have task number 1, hit enter, and finally it's working. And task number 2, this time we're going to use the add task button. So if we click the trash can button, it pulls up this alert, and we'll say yes. So we'll say yes just to get rid of it. And yeah guys, this is it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned something new from it. As always, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below, and I will try to get to you as soon as possible. Comment down below as well what you want to see next or in future videos, so I'll know what to post. Other than that, have a good day guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you all in my next video.